At the Berlin Conference, hosted from 1884 to 1885 by Bismarck, they went over the goals for imperialist nations, like how to care for the conditions of their Africans' moral and material well-being, and help in suppressing slavery, and especially the slave trade. Balance of powers politics were perhaps the most significant reason for grabbing even the most worthless pieces of land. The Europeans gave little concern for the local and tribal differences as they were drawing up the borders of Africa. Nations had to prove they established significant authority in a territory to protect existing rights, such as freedom of trade and transit. But this was often replaced with violence and forced labor. Of colonialism could also provide some benefits. Britain made investments in infrastructure in India, along with irrigation systems, railways, and cities. Concepts such as nationalism and political liberty, which were later to be used by colonial people as a tool for their own liberation, were also European exports. Denmark was one of the earliest explorers of Europe, with its Vikings discovering Iceland, Greenland, and a part of the New World. By the 20th century, Denmark still had claim over Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. Speaking of old explorers, Portugal also participated in the new imperialism game. Since the mid-1400s, Portugal had sent up many trading posts on the African coast. As the years progressed, it expanded to India, the East Indies, and Brazil. When the mad scramble for Africa began, Portugal expanded its coast colonies in Angola and Mozambique, Guinea, Cabinda, and Principe Sao Tome. It tried to unite Angola and Mozambique, but Great Britain wouldn't allow it because it wanted to complete its Cape of Good Hope to Cairo. It also had colonies in India like Daman, Din and Go. In the East Indies, it had East Timor. Another contender for the East Indies was the Netherlands. The Dutch created the Dutch East India Company, which was chartered in 1602. It landed in Southeast Asia for profits. They established a station on the Cape of Good Hope in Africa as a way station for their ships sailing between the Dutch East Indies and home. The Dutch settlers were called Boers, Dutch for farmers. They took over the native African lands and set up giant farms. When the British took over, fighting broke out between the two groups. In the 1830s, to escape the British, thousands of Boers moved north. This was known as the Great Trek. In the East Indies, the company took Malacca from the Portuguese and fought the British and Javanese for control of Java. The discovery of oil, tin, and rubber caused the Dutch to expand their control over Sumatra, Borneo, Celebes, the Moluccas, and Bali. The collection of islands became known as the Dutch East Indies or Indochina. Management of plantations and trade brought a large Dutch population to the islands, unlike the British who lived temporarily in India, then retired to Britain. The Netherlands also controlled Suriname in South America. In 1830, France became involved in Algeria, seizing it from the Ottoman Empire, and in Indochina in the 1840s, after 7 French mercenaries were killed. In the Americas, France controlled French Guiana and some Caribbean islands. It also tried setting up a puppet government in Mexico under Maximilian I, but America told them to leave. But its loss to the Prussians in the Franco-Prussian War, France sought colonies to prove to the world that it still mattered. It gobbled up the rest of Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Madagascar, French Djibouti, Somaliland, French West Africa, French Equatorial Africa, and many Pacific islands. The French supported a policy of assimilation, the idea that in time the local population would become absorbed into French culture by modeling all local schools, courts, and businesses after French institutions. They recognized African institutions and culture but regarded them as inferior to French culture. Germany also began its acquiring of colonies in the 1880s, along with the other nations. Though Chancellor Bismarck wasn't that concerned with colonies in Africa and Asia, he once displayed a map of Europe and stated, "This is my Africa." to show his true fascination. But during the Berlin Conference, Germany established protectorate over Nambia, Togoland, the Cameroons, and Tanganyika. After, again though Bismarck showed interest a while later, even trying to sell off German Southwest Africa because he said it was a waste of money. When Kaiser Wilhelm II came to power, he pushed for Germany's day in the sun, with colonies like Great Britain. Germany even claimed half of New Ghana and countless islands in the Pacific. Germany had a great advantage due to its powerful industrial machine, helping it acquire colonies in order to catch up with France and Great Britain. Russia didn't really get into the overseas colonial business that much, but it had acquired Alaska in the New World. At the time, it was thought to be worthless, but the Russians didn't want the British to have it, so they sold it to the United States in 1867 for $7.2 million. During the 1800s, Russia started taking more land in Central Asia. Russia extended from the Baltic Sea to Afghanistan to the Bering Strait, but Russia wanted land on the Mediterranean coast, and so went to war with the Ottoman Empire. Again. The Russo-Turkish War lasted from 1877 to 1878, and ended with the Congress of Berlin. Hosted by Bismarck, the Eastern Question was brought up forward again, and the Treaty of Berlin drawn up. From the Ottomans, Balkan, Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro gained full independence. Bulgaria was made an autonomous state. It became fully independent in 1908 after winning a war with Serbia. The treaty also let Austria-Hungary occupy Bosnia and Herzegovina, while Britain got Cyprus. Russia was again at war in 1905, this time with an imperial nation on an island in the Pacific, known as Japan. It became the Russo-Japanese War, fought over Russia wanting warm water ports in Korea and Manchuria. With Russia's loss, the Russian Revolution began, and Tsar Nicholas II was forced to make the Duma, a type of Russian parliament, and a constitution. Japan had become the most industrialized Asian nation, trying to adapt Western ways. They did hold on to tradition and kept a samurai way of fighting, though. Japan acquired Taiwan in 1895, got half of Sakhalin in the peace talks with Russia, and flat-out annexed Korea in 1910. It also had many other Pacific islands, like Iwo Jima. Spain was once known as the first empire that the sun never set on, but by the late 1800s, Spain was only left with Guam, Puerto Rico, the Canary Islands, and a handful of Pacific Isles, and the Philippines, which of his former glory. It had acquired Fernando Po, Rio de Janeiro, Ifni, and Spanish Morocco in the scramble for Africa, though. But the Spanish Empire finally saw its end at the hands of America in the Spanish-American War in 1898, where America declared war on Spain to liberate Cuba over the USS Maine exploding in Havana Harbor. Spain was blamed, but studies show it was probably a malfunction in the ship. With Spain's loss, it was forced to give up Cuba its independence and sell Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to America for $20 million. It sold the rest of its Pacific islands, like the Marshall, Caroline, and Macocains, to Germany soon after.